you're going to go down, might as well go down swinging. Hey there, folks. As you may or may not know, the channel Nando V Movies for the last couple of years has been doing these pseudo collaborations where he presents a theme, one certain kind of scene. There's done one marvelous scene, one villainous scene. I participated in one last year, one musical scene, where a certain specific type of scene is highlighted, and he and other channels familiar with him put out videos. And even those who don't know him, but channels that are smaller, like mine, or even smaller still, can put out a video in that same theme and it'll get added to the playlist. So whether you're finding me on that playlist or because you already follow my stuff, welcome. This time, it's one last scene. Fitting, as this is the last one Nando V Movies intends to actually organize himself. Someone else might pick up the torch in future. It's hard to say. But for right now, this might be the end of this particular project. And it is intended to talk about endings. Now, Nando did say in his own video that these don't have to be the literal final scene of a film. That having been said, that's absolutely what I'm going to focus on. And I wanted to narrow down on a very specific type of ending. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. I just had to figure out what I was going to use as my example. For the type of ending, I want to talk about an abrupt ending. An ending that you did not think it was going to end there and it just cut to black, we're done. And there are some marvelous examples, and there are absolutely examples of it going very badly. Abrupt endings are tricky. The key to a good abrupt ending, in my opinion, is ending it at a moment in the story where, by stopping right there, says something and makes a point. By the fact that you chose to end there, it brings attention to something that might have been lost or not properly appreciated had the film or show continued on to a more standard resolution and denouement or coda or, sort of wrap up. Like, no, hard stop right there. And the way to do it right is to have that stop make a point. So, as I said, I considered a number of things. I considered Inception. I considered the final episode of the show Angel. But I am going to focus on the movie The Grey, directed by Joe Carnahan and starring Liam Neeson. This movie came out in 2012, and by its nature, I'm going to be talking about the ending, so spoilers if you hadn't guessed that already. This is a film that focuses on a man named Otway, and he has been running security on an oil rig out in Alaska. And security, in this case, primarily means keeping the wolves away. And he is a man not at a good point in his life. Now, his return plane crashes, so he and his coworkers are stuck dealing with the elements, the cold, the lack of supplies, and the wolves. Now, there are absolutely criticisms to be made towards this movie, particularly in its depiction of wolves. It shows them as more aggressive than is realistic. It leans into the alpha thing, which has been debunked for who knows how long. I'm far more forgiving of that particular issue here, though, because it actually has a particular story purpose for that. Whereas often when I see it, it's just like, you didn't even need to perpetuate that misinformation. Here, I understand why it can bug some people, because normally it bugs me, but no, there's a point. And that point is as we approach the end. Because this is ultimately a men versus nature story. And while I've certainly got nothing against men versus nature stories, they're not something I gravitate towards, if for no other reason than they tend to fall under the category of what I usually kind of think of as men movies. And some of those I can like every now and then, but as a whole, something with that energy, not usually my jam. Not at this point in my life. I wonder why. But even with that sense, which is there somewhat, because this is an all-male cast, them battling the elements, but it's not about triumphing over nature. It's actually not even really about the fact that you can't triumph over nature. The fact that it's man versus nature isn't the point. What is the point? Well, the ending makes the point very, very clear. As the film has continued, all of the men who survived the plane crash, one by one, something happens. They get picked off by wolves. They suffer an injury that they can't recover from. One gets trapped underwater in a river and drowns. And eventually only Otway is left. And he's left carrying the wallets of the men who didn't make it. The intention being that when he got back, he could say, these are the ones who didn't make it. But he's cold. He's wet. He's in the wilderness. He doesn't know exactly where he is on a map. He couldn't tell you where he is. But he's still standing. And there's been a recurring thing, something that has been coming back. There's actually been a couple. One was images of his wife. Another was a memory of a poem that his father wrote. His father, who was not a poet, but he wrote these words.
Once more into the fray, into the last good fight I'll ever know. Live and die on this day. Live and die on this day.
So as he's arranging these wallets on the ground, and he remembers his wife, he remembers her last words to him before she died of a terminal illness.
Don't be afraid.
He realizes where he is. He hasn't been moving further away from the wolves. He has stumbled into their den. And now he only has one choice left to make: whether or not he's going to fight. And the poem comes back one more time.
Live and die on this day.
Because it's going to be both. This is going to be a day where he's going to die, most likely. But it's a day that he can also choose to live. And this matters because earlier in the film, he was having suicidal ideation. He was considering ending his own life. But here he is, facing down near certain death. And what does he do instead? He grabs what supplies he has, small liquor bottles, puts those between his fingers, tapes them down, tapes a knife into his other hand, smashes the bottles. He has weapons in his hand that he can't drop. And he prepares to face down that alpha wolf. This is why I'm forgiving of the alpha thing, by the way. Having it boiled down to a single opponent in that ending moment does actually make the story better than it would have been had it been a pack. Having it narrowed down to this one-on-one confrontation amplifies the story. And it cuts out just as he lunges forward to fight. Does he kill the wolf? Does the wolf kill him? Do they both die? Does he somehow, against all odds, survive? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I mean, statistically, odds are no matter what, he's probably going to die, just given the situation he's in. Even if it wasn't with the wolves there, he was probably going to die. But putting him in a confrontation with the wolves makes the point that his choice is to either give up or keep fighting, not because you'll win, but because choosing to fight means something. Making the choice to fight, no matter what is going to happen, that is a choice you can always make. You can't control whether or not you will live or die. You can choose whether or not you're going to fight. And by cutting it at this exact moment, that makes the point. Because it doesn't matter how any of this goes from here. The only thing that matters is that he chose to fight. That choice, and the instant in which it is clear which choice he made, that is the absolute correct moment to end, to finish, to go, that is why we are telling the story. That is the point that we want to make. The choice to fight is what is important, not whether or not you can win, not whether or not you survive, but that choice matters. And the thing is, they could have shown more. We know it was filmed. Joe Carnahan himself has said that additional footage for the fight was shot, but he claims he never intended to use it. He certainly never did. Whether it was a choice made in the editing, how much of this do we show, and they made the correct choice to cut it where it was, or he, as he currently claims, always intended it to end it right there, but just shot some extra stuff basically as DVD extras or whatever, which for the record were never released. But we still know additional stuff was shot because in the trailers, there's a few tiny flashes of both him and the wolf charging each other. And yes, there's also the mid-credit scene where like you kind of see their bodies and the wolf is kind of breathing, but they're both laying there. I think the presumption is meant to be that they are both dying, but honestly, that mid-credit scene doesn't matter. That comes later because the actual important point, the point at which you stop the story and run the credits, is his choice to lunge forward and to fight. I, first of all, very much support this message. You can't win every fight. Some fights you will absolutely lose. In the end, we're all going to have a day that we don't see the other side of. But you still have that choice every time. Do you stop? Do you let it end? Or do you stare death down and tell him to
wait his goddamn turn?
And maybe it is his turn, but to pull a line from a once great TV show.
And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
But the thing is, eventually, today will come. And one day, no matter what you say, that will be it. But you can still choose. You can still make your point. Plant your feet. Do the thing that you're about to stop doing, which is to live. You can choose to live even on the day that you die. You can still choose to live. Hey folks, it's Vera during the edit. I just want to jump in here and say one thing real quick, that while I very much feel this is a strong message for the movie to have, I want to take a second to point out I'm not touting this as some sort of great life philosophy. I don't think people who are tired of fighting and who make the choice to not keep fighting are somehow inferior or weak or deficient or anything of that nature. I just wanted to say that because I don't want my praising of this film and how well it sticks the landing of its own message to be taken as me endorsing a specific view of life as a whole. Cool, back to it. I adore this ending. I adore this movie largely because of the ending. The movie was fine up to that point. Like, again, it's a good man versus nature story. It's well executed. But when that ending happened, I thought to myself, this is amazing. Some things are truly made by their endings, and this is the perfect ending for this story, for the point that it was making. And people should have seen it coming. As he's wrapping the tape around his hands, it's not intense, here comes a fight music. It's melancholic. Because the point isn't the fight, the point is the choice. This is music to accompany a choice, not music to accompany a fight. And if you want to see the difference, again, you can look to the trailers where they showed some of this stuff. That's music to prep for a fight. But it's not about the fight, it's about the choice. And I made the choice to highlight this particular film. While it is not the only example of a brilliantly done, abrupt ending, it is one of my favorites. And it's the one I wanted to highlight for this. Have you seen this particular movie? What other abrupt endings do you really like? I mentioned some others for me. Inception, we don't get to see whether or not the top falls, because whether or not the top falls doesn't matter. What matters is he made the choice. He made the choice that this would be his reality. So that's certainly one. What are some others? What are some of your favorite endings in general? But I'd love to hear some more abrupt endings. Maybe at the top of your comments, give a spoiler warning for whatever it is you're going to say. But that's kind of the nature of the beast on a topic like this. Whatever your thoughts are, drop them down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living, even if you can't help me out that way. You know all the YouTube things. You know what they are. But what I really want you to remember is that whether you choose to fight or whether you have chosen, I need to stop, whatever choice you make on any given day, you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Drum roll for my highest supporting patrons: Robin Moore, Zubin Lafula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B., Turok, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Gozer the Gozerian, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Geek Filter, Melinda Walters, Toby Jackson, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Barnaby Likes the Poodle, Robin Powell, T Love, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, Quite Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pau Barabajoggle, and Mira G. Thanks so much.